with the 140 beds, so 60 of them are emergency shelter. Those people that you see are homeless and don't have a place, they're signing up. But then we have our transitional living side, and that's 80 beds. So transitional living is whenever they're staying in the emergency shelter and they decide that they want to work on themselves and work towards self-sufficiency. If they agree to see a case manager once a week, go to our Hope Cares class if they're not working, and that's like life skills and resume building, and oh my goodness, that class is so amazing. So
also job readiness. Yeah,
job readiness. But they will do that class, and they're agreeing to do that class if they're not working, and they agree to work towards employment. They are guaranteed a bed every night as long as they're working their program. So 80 individuals and 80 beds are full of people that are trying to better their lives. And Patrick and I get to see those that we move out. So after they complete that, it's typically 6 months is what we give them. And at that 6-month period, we're moving them out and utilizing some funds that we have access to move them out into their own home. Or if at the 6-month period, we'll kind of reevaluate, and sometimes they get kicked out if they're not moving far enough or quick enough. And anyway, I won't go there, but whenever they're kicked out, there's a certain time period that they can't sign up for the emergency shelter side, and
so it's a process. You got a process and a program.
Yeah,
well, it's getting ready. It's getting ready for the future.
Yeah,
absolutely, it's getting ready for the future, and it's non-compliance is what he was probably trying to get to. Sometimes people are ready at first, you know what I'm saying, and then they get in there, the pressure gets too heavy, and then they get scared, and then they just starts. Then people get harder to service or to help,
Yeah. Well, the Facebook page, Hope Campus Facebook page, it's got success stories on there.
Yes.
It just really thrills me when I see, so and so they got a job, or they got a
Yeah.
house, or they got a car, or they've been clean for X amount of months or X amount of years. That blesses me.
Oh, yeah.
God is a God of restoration.
Right.
He's into the restoration business.
Yep. And we have access to jobs. So if someone there's a chicken plant that we have a contacts with in their human resources department, and whenever we have folks that ready to work, and they're in that program, that transitional living program, we tell them to go down and fill out a resume, and as soon as they fill out that resume, we shoot an email, and they're getting a phone call and getting a job. We have people that stop by, like landscape companies that just stop by and say, hey, I'm looking for someone that needs a job, and we'll typically pick people that are in that transitional living and working towards self-sufficiency and that are stable for them to work with, because at the beginning there's a few people that just aren't stable, and it's a program, like we're restoring in people, like we really are, and so whenever I said that we house them, right now we actually have a dollar-to-dollar match on a grant. So every dollar we bring in, we get to match with this money to house people. Yeah, so you're getting, I'm going to make a campaign for it, because it's very cool. Like that right now we have access to that. But but Patrick, brought one of those stories, like I said, 2 years working at Hope Campus, and his story involves going through there and getting the services that we provide. And one thing about the campus is, if there wasn't a Hope Campus, and people need to think, like, what would our community look like now without it? Because with it, at least the homeless are in a place where there's resources that they can access when they're ready, because we know sometimes whenever God comes in someone's life and he's ready to help restore them, you need to catch them at that moment, because sometimes they can lose that.
When they're tender.
Yep, when they're tender. And so people do need to imagine what would things look like without Hope Campus. But thank the good Lord we have Hope Campus.
Well, we're blessed to have it here in the community, because lives are getting changed down there.
Yeah.
I've heard about it and seen it myself. Patrick, share some of your story. how does?
Okay, well, I just actually, I just dialed this in just a second ago. Yesterday was actually 20 months sober for me. And last month it was 2 years at Hope Campus, working at Hope Campus. Then my story, the testimony that God's given me is actually, I mean, it's one of those things where you almost have to be there to really get to comprehend all of it. But I was on the street for about 7 years, more than one state, a few different states, just in and out, in and out. And the one thing is that at one point, at the very beginning of all of it, God was like, "Hey, man, I need you to focus on me. You know what I'm saying? Turn towards me and allow me to keep your family safe. Just don't worry about it. You worry about me." So for years, I was on the street and I was searching for God. Now that does not mean that I wasn't stuck in addiction. It doesn't mean that I wasn't stuck in pain and hurt, because it was all there. It was all there. But the thing is that focusing on God's voice. And what I've learned is God's voice is everything. He's omnipresent, right? So it's in the birds, and He shows Himself in nature, in the people around us. They say, be careful how you're acting and what you're doing, because an angel could be sitting right beside you. And God's always beside us. And so I focused on God's voice. And I mean, if I could really dial in, it would be crazy. But I'm talking about if I saw a bird flying and God was like, "Hey, man, follow that as best as you could," I did. And that's just obedience, right? And like right now, I'm a sinner still, and it's difficult. And that's the thing about Hope Campus is one thing we do need is we need wraparound services for people. We have a 6-month program, and there's programs out there that's longer. But here at Hope Campus, like we're right here on the River Valley, and we have a high number of homeless people here in the enforcement area, and it's up to like 450 or more. Give or take some, but it's the thing. The thing is that we can have as many success stories as we can, but that number's still going up.
Yeah.
The world's getting worse. It's getting more difficult to live.
Oh, there was a newspaper article. There were 55 people that are losing their apartment because HUD is, I think the housing authority is ending a contract with Boardwalk Apartments, and it sounds like they have access to some apartments for them, but you can't tell me out of those 55, some aren't going to become homeless, because there's a barrier. Even doing the paperwork, we look at that as a barrier. Anything that is in the way of the person and what they need to do in action to have an outcome in transportation. Like if they're getting mental health services and going to the guidance center, and they have to get on the bus, Fort Smith City Transit, to get there. Well, that's a barrier to get to where they need the action to happen, and then the positive outcome to come from it. So they're going to have a barrier doing paperwork. And some people aren't ever going to do it, or someone can't read and they won't be able to do the paperwork, and they're too embarrassed to tell someone I can't read, and things like that. And some people are going to become homeless from that, and luckily they can come to us and get services. It's a great place. And Patrick, working with him at Hope Campus, I get to see him raising his son. He's a single father. You hear him talking about, 7 years being homeless, and now he's raising his son, and doing a good job. I have a son, a 4.5-year-old, and, raising a kid's tough. So sometimes I imagine what Patrick's going through, and I have someone helping me. He doesn't have anyone helping him.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I got to Hope Campus by exactly what I was talking about, by listening to God's voice. And I came to Hope Campus one time and I didn't utilize the services. I was out and about, still doing my thing, still listening to God, but it's all in God's timing. And I actually caught a charge here, right? And then I went back to my hometown, and my dad came and got me and went, and then COVID hit. So I had a warrant, and this whole time during COVID, if they pulled me over for jaywalking or something like that, I would not get pulled back here, right? I just, everything was closed down, right? They weren't putting nobody in. And so it was like major stuff, right? And so that was like a period where you know, I was at home and I was doing the same thing. Well, after COVID hit, I got picked up and I ended up in jail, and I was in my cell. And I prayed to God, and this is how God works, right? So I prayed to God, and I was like, man, if I'm going back there to Fort Smith, I want to be security at Hope Campus. I was in my cell, you know, broken, you know what I'm saying, just trying to figure it out, listening to God, and praying to Him, talking to Him. And I get extradited back here, and I get out with, it was like a 33-day wait there, and I got transported here. And the day I got out, I walked to Hope Campus, and I went and talked to a case manager, and I was just talking to the case manager because I knew that case manager before the fact, right? And when I was talking to this case manager was like, you know, if you'll be good for about a year, I'll try to get you a job of security. This is without talking to that case manager about that prayer, right? And so I ended up getting something, a smaller charge because I was being too loud in front of a restaurant, and I was trying to listen to God. The devil's on one shoulder, God's on the other. And when that happens and people see that, it's scary to people. I mean, people are going to look at it like that person's talking to themselves. But, you know, for us Christians and for people that are true believers and stuff, I mean, how many of the disciples are, you know, like Jesus? I'm sure Jesus was kind of going to say it a little bit like, talking, and so I was like, what? Oh, he is talking to God, you know? I'm sure it's why Jesus went off by himself.
Yeah, he did that a lot.
He did that a lot, right? So